All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio, right here on, once again, the Dark Matter Radio Network and PSN Radio. We are live, as always, and you can check out the chat room over on www.psn-radio.com. With us now is the guest of this first hour, Miss Laurie McDonald. Welcome to the show, ma'am. And let me just say that you have one of the hardest day jobs ever, I think, in this field.
You know, it can be a hard job sometimes. It's harder at night.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show here with us and spending some quality time with us. Now, give the audience a brief of your background, because I just really became, aware of you recently when you were on Unraveling the Secrets with Tim Beckley. Shout out to Tim Beckley, and of course his lovely, lovely co-host, Miss Anderson. And it fascinates me anytime I speak to somebody who does what you do. For example, when you counsel abductees. What got you interested in doing this and doing hypnotherapy on these folks?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, actually. I was interested in the mind always, and the power of hypnosis seemed quite profound when I was young, and all of the reading I did on it. I studied social behavioralism for a while, but then I enrolled into the Sacramento Institute of Alchemical Hypnotherapy, which is a transformational hypnotherapy, and I finished in Santa Fe. But during the process of examination, you have to regress somebody and then address a particular subject and then bring them back up. And they test you on that. They want to make sure you can do that before they send you out in the world. And
now, can I ask a question, if I may?
Sure.
Now, you said it was a hypnotherapy school?
Right.
Alchemy? Okay, so does that mean you were involved in utilizing drugs, medication, or other types of substances to induce
he's trying to get high tonight on his trip. Can you supply him?
I am not. Come on.
No, it's all...
no, it's a good question, actually, though.
No, it's all psychotherapy. There's no... pharmaceuticals.
There's no pharmacology. There's no pharmaceuticals.
No pharmaceuticals involved, right?
No, none whatsoever. So during the examination process, I induced a person, regressed them back to a particular age, and while they were about to express something, their story changed, and they were all of a sudden seeing a UFO. They were camping. He was with his brother. They saw it hover, then land. They saw entities, and right when I was about to ask a question, a ball of light about the size of a softball appeared right above his head and zipped down to the end of his body. And, I'm in the middle of an examination, and I turn and look over my shoulders to see if anybody else saw it, and 3 out of the 5 judges did see it, and they were like wide-eyed and jaws open, and they indicated for me to continue. When I started to talk to him again, it was like he was clean. He had no memory at all about talking about a UFO or seeing the entities, and he had my curiosity piqued. He was just about to describe the entity and gone. So I've been very intrigued since then. And then all of a sudden, I started getting lots and lots of calls. A lot was happening, and people wanted to explore it.
So, in other words, the whole UFO contactee thing just kind of happened by chance.
Well, yes,
let me ask you, how long ago did this happen, by the way?
That was back in 1996.
Wow.
Okay, since video cameras were around, please tell me that you were recording your test and your certification there. Tell me there's video of this.
No, they didn't, but I do have a plethora of other fantastic videos that show some pretty good-looking UFOs in infrared video. And there's a picture on my Facebook page, actually. I was driving from Sacramento to San Diego, and I hit the Grapevine right about 50 miles north of Los Angeles, and I felt like I was being followed, and I kept looking, and I glimpsed several times what I thought was a UFO. So I finally just pulled over quickly at a a Triple J gas station and whipped out my digital camera, turned around and took a picture and got a daytime picture of a UFO. And within a matter of seconds, there were just helicopters everywhere. So I got back into my car and took off and posted the picture. I mean, what else could I do?
Has any government official ever come knocking at your door about that picture?
Not about that picture.
Well, other pictures? What else has happened that's caught their attention?
Well, I've had an incident earlier on. I got a little bit, was my own fault, I guess. I got a little bit too close to a base. We would go out to gather evidence, and we would set up in the daytime and mark our horizons and come back with the cameras at night to film. And we got in a little bit of trouble. But I've had an incident too where just out of nowhere, where there shouldn't have been anyone, we didn't hear any vehicles approaching yet, there was one all of a sudden. These two men in suits came over, went right into the back of my boogie van, which back in the day, you know, we didn't have everything on laptops. Then I had actual star maps and books.
Oh,
and
that stuff that the older folks called paper, right?
Yeah, everything was paper. we had lights strapped to our heads.
Way back when.
But they went right through my stuff. They rifled through everything, and I kept asking them who they were. And they said they were private security, so I continued with private security for what or who or where? I mean, where am I trespassing? And they didn't. They weren't actually in the position to be answering the questions.
Where was this again? Was this in Area 51 where you were driving?
No. Actually, that incident was just east of Sacramento here.
Oh, okay.
What bases around there?
Yeah, what bases are on there?
Well, actually, there's bases all over here, from Sacramento all through the Bay Area. There's Beale Air Force Base and McLennan Air Force Base, and there's Travis Air Force Base. I mean, they're all over the place here, so there's no shortage of them.
Do you think this was some kind of alien ship that you saw, or do you think it was a government maybe spy plane or some kind of craft they were testing? And if that is the case, you know, why were they following you?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I mean, it's always just speculation. We don't have the answers. I mean, maybe companies like Lockheed Martin and so forth have the answers because in their own manuals.
Well, they'll never tell. They'll never tell us.
They refer to them as AVCs as opposed to UFOs, which apparently stands for Alien Visitation Craft. So those would be identified craft. The other are still unidentified, and based on the amount of different species they say are currently visiting our planet, it could be a number. There's about 5 or 6 in the top ranking that we can speculate. I mean, I just had a picture brought to me of a daytime craft accidentally taken by a photographer who sold a house and was creating a postcard for a local real estate company. And there's a craft, looks like it cut right out of the cloud. And it's a perfect picture, you know, and I've contacted the real estate company, the realtors on it, trying to ask for their printer. I'm trying to find who took the picture. They won't give me any information at all, but which is ridiculous. And it's clear as can be. So there's lots of different craft appearing. And I would say, based on the proximity to a home, it was most likely an abduction craft. They are getting better at returning people. I mean, over the decades, we hear lots of stories of people being returned to the wrong room or, sadly, to the wrong house, which was the case with a couple of little boys who went missing. And they had been telling the parents about seeing UFOs. The children were no longer in the pool. They were swimming in the pool in the backyard. The mother checked on them, went back, and the kids weren't there. She became frantic, looking everywhere. Sadly, shortly later, the children were found several doors down in an actual in-ground pool, completely different than their much more shallow play pool. The kids, they don't know how they could have got into the yard. There was no way for them to enter or climb the fence or get in any way, and yet both the children were found drowned.
Wow.
The parents
Wow.
speculated that maybe accidental, where the children are put back. A lot of people are left standing outside of their house or in a different room, and they wake up and they sense they're being told to go back. But then, scariest of all are the reports that I've had firsthand, where a person awakens while they feel like they're being transported, levitated through the air or through a wall, and they wake up halfway through and begin to panic. And they are then in the presence of what they say are, based on the physical description, a tall gray.
That's actually, I mean, I've found it, at least in my research over the last decade, Laurie, to be the common abductee scenario.
It was.
For a long time, yeah. They would
Yeah.
levitate, go through the wall, and there'll be tall grays. Are you still getting those kind of reports with your patients?
Only when they're regressed back to a certain time. And so it makes sense. So if we're looking at an incident in the 80s or the 90s, well, it still happens. No, the grays, the tall and short grays, actually, it's not uncommon for it to be reported that there's multiple entities, sometimes mantis, sometimes reptilian, but generally always tall and short grays. There's a hierarchy, and the shorter grays seem to work for the tall grays seem to work for the reptilians, and everybody works for the mantis.
And in reality, they all work for Obama.
Yeah, oh, wow.
Just
you
kidding.
had to bring that in, didn't you?
Just kidding.
Well,
No shots at Obama tonight. No,
Yeah, well,
that's fascinating though, Laurie. No, that's fascinating though. Real quick, not to cut you off, sorry, but it's fascinating to me that it is a time period thing. And you say they're getting better at dropping people off. Do you think also it might correlate with the psyche of the nation itself in these time periods? And the reason I say that is because, of course, in the 90s, when a lot of abductees were claiming this scenario, we had the X-Files on TV where the basis of the show was Mulder's sister was abducted, and this was the exact way it was done. She was levitated through a wall, and the aliens were tall grays. I mean, it was the same exact scenario. Do you think that that might have played a part in it? Because a lot of times, and I've found this also in the last decade to be true, whenever there's major movies or anything that is on TV that is really popular that deals with UFOs or aliens on a realistic type of level, it seems that there's a spike in sightings, in abductions, and I wonder how much of that is authentic, how much of that is part of the psyche of what people are watching, and maybe they want to be a part of that so badly.
I have the answer for you there. Let me tell you.
Okay. Go ahead.
First off, have you ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Wes Bateman?
Wes Bateman sounds very familiar. He sounds familiar to me.
I can't say I have.
Okay, Wes Bateman was a very well-known extraterrestrial telepathic contactee. He had numerous communications that he took very good care of. He eventually, after decades of silence, came forward and told all of his stories to his very good friend, Gene Roddenberry, who turned his stories into Star Trek, a very famous TV show. And then there's Close Encounters.
Yeah, I've heard of that show, yeah.
Yeah, and then Close Encounters, Steven Spielberg, that's right up here a little bit north of Sacramento. And there's an area called, it's a town called Colusa. And Colusa is where the first incident took place. Steven Spielberg brought them out there and interviewed the family that this happened to. It's based loosely on a true story, but Colusa is the area. And to this very day, I get clients from that area, and I have one coming saying he's seeing still the same type of entity, the gray, all the time. He's placed security cameras all over his house. He's even got one in his doorbell. That's a reverse one, so he can see people approaching. And so even though, yes, it is in the collective conscious of the country, it translates. But what I'm seeing now are people describing a different type of entity, different type of relationship with these extraterrestrials. It's almost as if it's really not so important what the craft looked like or where it came from or what entity it was. But what might be important here is the fact that your reality has changed. It has grown to encompass both the unseen and the seen worlds, and your consciousness now is expanding. And so if we just get past the particular frequency band where the extraterrestrials exist and try to move out further, we may develop consciousness expansion, which very well may be our own evolution. It may be what we're destined to be if we don't get so tied up chasing out which entity or which craft we're seeing. I mean, of course, there's a lot of them are military, and people are pushing for disclosure like Stephen Bassett, and perhaps...
yes, indeed.
Yeah, and you know, maybe with the congressional hearings and the petitions that are signed, we'll get disclosure. I mean, do we?
Do you think that really might happen? I mean, do you think that really would happen at this point?
I think with Podesta saying his biggest regret is not speaking about to the UFOs, and I think with Ron Hellyer, the former defense minister of Canada during the Cold War, saying that absolutely there is an extraterrestrial presence on this planet, and Nick Pope also stating that the British were involved in their own secrets with UFOs. We've got our own books, many written on Eisenhower, who we believe probably did have some type of a contractual agreement with the Greys where they traded roughly, they said 250,000 people were allowed to be experimented
Exchanged,
upon.
right. Yeah.
Exchanged. Mostly GIs, though, because this way the government could double track them, and because they always know where their GIs are. And so that we see in abduction cases that there's often a military connection or a scientific or medical connection. We see that they're generational, that's for sure.
Well, here let me ask you.
Go ahead.
Can I throw out a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You keep on referring, by the way, to for this country. Since you are I would assume part of some type of a association for hypnotherapists, either on a national or a global level, has the type of entity been persistently the same throughout all the abduction cases that are being recorded on a global level, or are we the only ones that are primarily dealing with the Greys?
No, I mean, we just have to understand the languaging and verbiage of the people expressing it. I mean, the Asians and Middle Easterns say jinn, and so they have their own cultural belief systems based on it. Very religious people say demons because that's the filter that they're viewing it through. I mean, and so it's perspective.
Laurie, I'm glad you brought that up because
if they're looking at it even through regression therapy, are they describing the similar shape?
Some of them are very similar, and I have an ET artist in our the Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee Support Group. And she's a very talented artist, and she'll work very much like a police artist.
Sketch artist.
Right, a sketch artist, take the description.
Right.
And so this is a new branch that we're looking at, and so we're going to see. We're going to see how close they are, because it's very easy to say the eyes were this or that, but... So absolutely, more evidence and as much as physical descriptions and physical evidence that we can get is important. You know, I had somebody contacting me earlier asking me, listen, can you help me? I need discrete x-rays. You know, I have this triangular shaped mark. It feels like this. You know, so I said, photograph it, send me the pictures. He did. I have them. And I'm looking. We'll find somebody to do that. You know, people are doing what they have to, but the numbers are so steadily increasing. I mean, currently they're stating that roughly 280 million people worldwide claim to be abducted. And that would be based on a 4% value system. And in my group, I have about 75 people, and I asked them, how many of you reported? Only 2. So in a group where the topic is, abduction and contact for experiencers, 2 of them reported, and look at this number. So that number's got to be astronomically much higher. So we have to...
Who do they report it to is the next question.
MUFON.
MUFON.
Yeah, there's a lot of different organizations that you can report it to.
Right, UFOreport.com.
Hell, worse, tell your local therapist. I mean, just,
And I do get a lot of reports, I have to say, because I gather research. I am writing a book right now called The Extraterrestrial Interference. And so, yeah, people are providing me with information. One of the group members has given me his medical records as well as his MRIs. He's elderly. He's just about 80. And... he is a lifetime experiencer. He was a, pre-med student. He was in the Navy. He believes he has 2 implants, actually 3, one in the pineal gland. Those are the MRIs that I have. And he says that he has had an implant behind the knee and then one closer to the groin. But over the years, they're moving together. So I took out the camera and I filmed them, and I touched it, and when I pushed on it, it retracted. It retreated like Miss Pac-Man. And I took the pressure off. It moved back, and it was eerie. So I continued to film them, and he expressed his view, saying that when they touch, they die. He thinks he'll die, and he then gave me permission on film to then come back and film his body post this happened. Not ever looking forward to doing something like that. I don't know what it would prove. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, you'll be able to.
Not sure about that, but he believes
you'll be able to you'll be able to maybe get some results of what these things are once they do the autopsy on them.
Right. Well, yes, and some of the implants that have been removed and looked at, contain both organic and inorganic materials. But
here's the thing, though: the one in his knee and his near his groin, that could be removed surgically now. Why doesn't he have it surgically removed?
They have a life of their own. He believes they're moving. He's watching them. He's been, I don't know. He's probably not really wanting to risk that. He's from a generation where this isn't something. A topic that was easily discussed without one being ridiculed, and really have we changed that much? I mean, I'm hoping that we have, but sadly I do see that experiencers who come forward, no matter how credible, people still will often ridicule them, or they risk losing their job. And we have seen that, and I've had people in my group say that they're at risk too. They can't let people know because they'll get fired.
Unfortunately, there is sexual harassment, but no UFO harassment.
That's true. But right. I think part of it, I think, is when people hear somebody talk about their experience and they start off, well, I had a dream and I woke up and I couldn't move in my dream. Immediately, the skeptic mind starts saying, well, you're suffering from sleep paralysis. Mm-hmm. And you hallucinated the rest. Because, look, I suffer from sleep paralysis myself. I've been in that position where I wake up and I can't move. And you really do feel like there's something in the room with you, or somebody's looking at you, or there's something there. I mean, I've had that happen to me several times in the past.
Right. It's called the hypnagogic state. And it's because the sleep chemical in the brain has been released for the body, but the conscious mind hasn't received it yet. The body's still asleep. You're alert. The presence that you feel is yourself. It depends. Now, then that happens, and other people, though, who have had the same type of sleep paralysis and then feel that they're seeing an entity, their stories do go a little bit further. They break from the paralysis. There's more going on, and they're more lucid. The level of lucidity through the experience is what matters. And it's not for naught the extraterrestrials most likely can simulate the sleep chemical so that they can harvest what they want. I mean, they apparently do it with cows.
Speaking of which, I mean, that's an interesting phenomenon in itself, the whole cow mutilation phenomenon. I mean, how does one explain that, for example? What farmers need to mutilate their own cows?
Right, not at the cost. I mean,
right.
They've got a big investment in them. They've fed and watered them and paying on the property and so on and so forth.
Right.
And so that's their money, right? So they're certainly not going to do that. There's absolutely no motivation. But it's the cow has two stomachs, and there's been some theories that they put fetuses in them on a holding ground. I don't know. I've heard a couple of.
I've heard people say that actually for the hybrids. And that's how they birth some hybrids when they're taken from the womb early or something like that. I mean, I've actually heard folks talk about that before, which would make sense. I mean, look at the Matrix, where they grew people in little pods that look like a womb. We're growing in a womb, so it would make sense to them to create an artificial womb if they're creating hybrids. You can't have the mother go full term on Earth with an alien baby,
It's not unusual for me, being a regression hypnotherapist, to hear accounts of, missing babies and hybrid babies. It is part of the subculture of ufology, is the whole hybrid program. I mean, when they're harvested and ovum, sperm is taken, for what purpose? What are they doing with it? It's speculated that the Greys live to be about 900 years old, 1,000 years old, and then they die. That they're doing this to preserve their race, and they're trying to create a being. I'm not really sure I buy into that.
Here's a working theory I have, Laurie, and maybe you might you might tell me if it's good or not, if it works for you.
Sure.
My theory on the whole hybrid thing is, if they really are being genetically created by Greys or whatever, the Anunnaki or whoever created life on Earth, whatever, if there is that genetic thing going on, perhaps this is their job, and they do this from planet to planet, create life, and then seed it on a planet, just leave it there and let it flourish. And maybe these beings, literally, they do this as a way of, this is what they do, this is their job. And they just go to every star system and create an intelligent life forms.
And we're the pollen. I mean, seriously.
Well, there's said to
but not really.
22.2 subspecies of gray, and our own DNA shows that there's a lot to that.
Mistakes.
And if you look at it, they're all have the same torso, arms, and legs, the same humanoid shape. Whether it looks like a praying mantis or which is what the mantis look like, or an ant, which is what the Greys look like. I mean, these are both huge, thriving cultures in our ecosystem. And so who knows what they can genetically spice. The point is, should they be allowed to? And I'm going to go with no, because they're creating what is called a post-abduction stress disorder that people do suffer from, and it comes with an entire list of symptoms, and it's a real syndrome. It was coined by Rose Hargrove, who was a registered psychiatric nurse, and this is something that exists, and it's caused by this type of extraterrestrial interference. Should they be allowed to do that? No. I know people say, well, I created a soul contract and I agreed. I don't believe that either. I mean, it's a generational thing. So every single person in your family for your whole bloodline agreed to do that? I don't think so. That's too much of a coincidence.
What do you think of the theory?
Hang on. If the government has allowed 250,000 people to be experimented on, it's their contract. Unfortunately, we're part of the cattle or the population of the sheeple.
Well, here's a better question. Hold on, check this out. How about this, for example? Say the government are the ones that are pulling off these abductions, and it's all a big conspiracy and a big hoax, and the government is actually the aliens, and there's no aliens doing it. And they're doing it because, guess what? Human cloning is illegal. There's certain things that they cannot do legally with this kind of science. Maybe this is something that's being done in a black ops type of way to do the science without having to, having to go through all the loopholes of the legal avenues that they have to go through.
There's just too many people around the world for too many years stating that this type of thing is happening, and we have our
but a hoax a hoax could be carried around. A hoax could be carried for years and years and years.
That doesn't account for the ancient alien theories, and the government doesn't need to create a hoax where they're going to have to create some type of holographic imagery that they can beam into the sky to look like a UFO.
I'll tell you what.
Control the masses. That's what church is for.
No, that's true too. But here, I'll tell you what, though. Have you ever read "Behold the Pale Horse" by William Cooper?
No, I have not. But I think I know where you're going with this.
I highly recommend you read it, because in that book, William Cooper talks about the government doing a false flag operation on the entire United States, where they're going to hoax alien intervention or alien interaction or an alien scenario to fool the population and to kind of do what this might be. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that the government might be behind the entire thing. It also explains why, for example, they've come out with like 30 different stories to Roswell. Keep them confused, keep them guessing.
Well,
keep
that's
them
true. But
look at also the Richard Doty thing in the 80s.
A man
that
who
came out
wears
with
two
Mirage Man.
watches never really knows what time it is. Absolutely. And so they'll keep the people confused until the people don't rely on the government for their source of information. When we can compile it and the researchers can gather it, and you can take credible people that perhaps were former government. I mean, why is it necessary that we have the United States government or the leaders of a particular church go, okay, yeah, all right, it's true, and then people can change their minds? I think for the amount of experiencers and the ones that I've worked with over the years, they don't require that. Now, their reality's already changed. Their core belief system, what they trust in everything, has already been altered and changed forever. They're now moving beyond that into a broader way of thinking, an expanded consciousness where there is a possibility to interact with a galactic neighbor, but not in an abduction scenario, in an ability to give and receive information, hopefully to perpetuate the betterment of humanity, where we look at the abduction scenario, and this is something that a thief in the night comes and robs and takes, generally against one's will, leaving a psychological harm, where we need to move past that and maybe suppress that, make it illegal, or void the contract. I mean, maybe get another lawyer to look at it, because at this point, I think if the people came and had the information disclosed, we could see and stop it. But the problem with disclosure is we're going to see where we were lied to. And then when people see that they were lied to, they're going to become resentful, unless they have a very good reason to do it.
Well, but here's the thing. Though. Americans are already resentful with their own government. In fact, most of the world is resentful with their governments. We're seeing more and more uprising every month, every year, of different countries where the people are just fed up with what is going on in their country. And this is just happening on a global scale. I don't think the government really has a leg to stand on if they think that they can continue a hoax this large for much longer. That's why this is why I get into it with Steve Bassett when we have him on about how much the government actually knows. I think the government knows very, very little. I think a lot of it is stuff that might be happening outside of their control. Now, that doesn't mean there's a shadow government or a pocket within the government that knows much, much more. But when you're talking about folks like Obama or the vice president or the cabinet chief, I mean, these guys don't know what's going on.
No,
They're buffoons.
I totally agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, they don't. This is the problem. They don't have control over the situation. The last thing the American government wants to do is come forward and say, "Yeah, we're having some type of interaction with them, but we have no control over the situation. We're outnumbered. We're outpowered. We're out everything." So, I mean, we can't come and make ourselves look weak by expressing that we'll appear weak to the rest of the world. There's a political angle that would prevent them from full disclosure. I would think that would be their priority one, not so much what just what the rest of the world is going to say, here's your weakness. And
well, here I'm going to say something that's probably going to be a little controversial here, and just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to actually excuse the government for their cover-up, if there is a cover-up. And the reason I say this is because I fully understand why there would be a need for a cover-up if this is real and it's a reality that aliens have landed on Earth, they've crashed, they've been here, maybe they seeded us. I understand why there would need for everything to be hushed up, especially in the 40s and 50s. I completely understand it. And I'm not even talking about on a scary level, because the population are going to get scared and run in the streets with their underwear hanging out of their heads and shotguns and blasting, scared the aliens are coming to take them. No, not because of that. Simply because of the technology involved. That technology, to whoever possesses and owns it, is better than gold. Right. We're talking about technology that could be, hundreds, thousands, millions of years more advanced than anything here on Earth, which, by the way, would not take 5 or 6 years to discover how it works, especially if there was no, living beings on this crash at Roswell or any of the other crashes. If they were all dead, we can't ask them, hey, Billy Bob, EBE, can you please, make this thing work? You can't ask anybody, right? So how long do you think it would take human beings to back engineer and find out how some of this technology works? Maybe decades, maybe hundreds of years. So I completely understand that level.
There's a couple of ways to reverse engineer where it might not take as long as you might think. But
yes, but when you're dealing with something that's completely alien, for example, we might be looking at a wire that to us it might look like fiber optic, but it might be something completely different that when we dissect it, it might take years to figure out. That's not a fiber optic cable.
I get it. But any technology that we're going to figure out from them, the problem is it's going to be turned into a weapon. And I mean, when this type of technology really could be used for free energy, for an advanced infrastructure, for advanced medicine, absolutely. I mean, because I know that some of the technology they talk about, even with psychotronics and radionics and the PSI warfare that they do, all of those things can actually be used for healing.
Well, we're assuming that a lot of this stuff is available. Maybe none of that stuff came with a crash. Let's just say that these aliens were tourists, space tourists, or just flying by. They crashed. I mean, really, are they going to have an entire pharmaceutical inside their ship, including all kinds of different technologies that to us would be bizarre and completely earth-shattering? Maybe not. Maybe their ship is very basic, just a typical pod type of thing with very basic technologies that is still very strange to us, but not earth-shattering as it'll heal everybody's illnesses or it'll give us free power.
No, not on that particular, not from the Roswell
one. But across the board, we got to really look at the crafts themselves and what technology might be there.
The motherships, I would imagine.
Well, I don't think there's been a crash of a mothership.
Well, is the mothership where we've heard lots of reports where a large craft opens up and several smaller pods or smaller saucers come flying out. And we don't know. What if they have families and one of their teenagers, weren't supposed to go out and stole one of the pods and crashed on Earth? I mean,
could happen.
We have no idea. But we have no idea what their dynamics are like. Well, actually, we are learning. We're learning a little bit about their psyche based on...
Yeah, they came here on alien prom night. That's it. And they pretty much screwed up.
Well, there's a lot of information, though, where people are very credible and have no reason to make it up. And I can't see that a government would go through such a elaborate hoax.
Well, I think the government would go through the hoax. I mean, the whole thing is the Brookings Institute report that they did in the 60s basically theorized that should disclosure actually happen and evidence of alien life happen, it would throw the world's financial markets and most world religions into such a total frenzy that societal collapse could realistically happen.
Well, and they're trying to circumvent such things like that. The Pope announced in May 2010, I believe, that in the event that the extraterrestrials make their presence on the planet known, he would be happy to baptize them. And that was that this is a fact. And and then he appointed his
I,
head
hang on one second. Hang on one second. I
demonologist.
don't believe. Hang on. I don't
Google
believe
it.
he
Go ahead,
exactly
Google it.
phrased it that way.
I believe
I
it
don't
was
believe
May the 10th,
Oh
2010.
no. The Pope did say something then, but I don't think he said if the alien presence made itself known. He said if there were aliens, not that he knows that they're there and
Right.
they would make the presence known. He said if aliens were to
They were.
come
I think he said something
to
about
Earth-
they'd be part of God's plan because they'll be our
Right.
brothers in the cosmos or something along those lines. But look,
Right.
any acknowledgement. Well, look, hold on. But any acknowledgement whatsoever from the Church of all people. Oh, Jesus! Anything they say, about this, it has to be looked at not only with a grain of salt, but also with a whole lot of curiosity. Because why would the Pope say anything about UFOs or aliens?
He appointed their head demonologist to handle,
Which is also very funny, by the way.
Yeah,
A demonologist.
that's strange. Okay, he appointed the head demonologist to take a look at any of the extraterrestrial stuff, not their head of astronomy or of a math department or anything like that. But I believe that it's called a chief demonologist. And that's who is in charge. He's an Italian fellow, and he's written several books on the subject, and he's very accredited, but he's been appointed by the Pope to handle anything to do with extraterrestrials. I think that says something. I'm not sure what, but it's something.
Well,
making a
also,
statement.
did you know that the Pope in the Vatican has a huge telescope and it's called the Lucifer?
It's called Lucifer?
Yeah.
No, actually did not know that. They called their telescope Lucifer. I did know that they found many oblong skulls in the catacombs underneath the Vatican.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I find that to be quite interesting, and those are speculated to possibly be extraterrestrial.
That is a speculation that is running wild. I think actually that I don't know. I'm not 100% believer that that's what it is. To be honest with you, Laurie, I think that's people honoring the extraterrestrials. Actually, elongating skulls is a custom in Africa, but why was it done in that time period? We really don't know. The Egyptians have found elongated skulls in pyramids.
Yes.
Why did they do it? Well, a lot of people think it's to honor the gods,
Right.
whoever these gods were.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And look, I do believe that there is a presence of some sort on Earth. But honestly, how much of a presence do you think that there really is going on at the moment? Do you think is as prevalent, or some of these people maybe, especially some of the folks that that have come forward in the last 15, 20 years with abduction scenarios or abduction stories? How many of them maybe are misinterpreting an abuse that might be going on in their past,
Right. Well,
and kind of camouflaging it with this?
I wish I knew an exact percentage, but most definitely there is a percentage of cases that are not extraterrestrial at all, and the person has a fragmented memory, and then to cope, they create a different scenario of what happened. And there's also a ritual abuse that happens to young children, and they also create, another story to cover it up. And then there actually is extraterrestrial abduction, and a screen memory is implanted in the person. And so they have a different memory until the conscious mind begins to seep and the subconscious bubbles up and the memory starts to come through. And people begin to put it together and see that something actually did happen. And there's good to see commonalities. I mean, there's a list of common factors that are all the same, and there are some that have very little publications, so it's not something that can be replicated in the media often or hardly ever. And we listen to hear when people are telling their stories to see if this particular detail comes up. And so it's not, we try to keep a little bit back because, like you say, people can definitely tap into that collective conscious way of thinking. And if the extraterrestrial of the decade is a reptile or reptoid looking,
Right.
then perhaps that they're seeing reptoids and, everybody's morphing into a reptile. So We
And
have
look,
to
it's
deliver.
happened back in the 50s were little green men. That was the popular alien of choice. Little green men, right? Little Martians. And then
Well,
that changed to the Greys.
I don't know if people reported that they were green. I think that in TV they reported that they were green, that Martians were supposed to be green. And I think, well, there's actually an entity that's reported quite often, and it's smaller than a gray, shorter and more stout, and it's blue. And some people,
Zaxxon.
it looks like a gnome.
Oh, okay.
It looks gnomish or Smurf-like even. Smurf-like
Okay.
might be closer, but very bulky, very square, and it's reported all the time. But then we can go all the way back into history, back to India, and we see that they had extraterrestrials come that were blue-skinned, and they were Vishnu, I believe.
I mean, that's going
Krishna.
to... I'm surprised I've heard more people talk about blue-skinned aliens, especially we had Avatar a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, but the blues that we have the information from were not, they were before that. Yeah, the avatars were blue, and but they were more svelte and slender. And yes, these other ones are very like Seven Dwarf-like and very bulky and misshapen, and they don't seem like an easy moving entity. So, but they've been reported over and over again. That's not an uncommon one in the industry, but on TV, maybe in a few years you'll be hearing about them.
About the blue aliens. Interesting.
About the blues, yeah. And probably a lot more hybrids because people like Dr. David Jacobs, are you familiar with him?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Well, he believes that the hybrids are being integrated into society and that they are positioning themselves and that they're at multiple levels of integration. That some hybrids connect very well socially, while others appear quite dysfunctional. But they could be working in like a low-level position, such as I believe the analogy or the position he used was like an innkeeper, where you check somebody in on the night shift, where you'd have very little interaction, but just enough for them to learn. And counts of one school teacher from Texas said that she was brought aboard a craft to work with hybrids. She said that they were like teenagers, and she was teaching them basically how to fit in with teenagers. And I guess who better than a high school teacher? But they were in the cafeteria. She had to correct how they held the tray, silverware, selected food, and so forth. They were inept in that area, but advanced in areas of telepathic communication and exhibited other psychic abilities, is what she recalled.
Where was this school again?
It was a school teacher who had claimed to be abducted many times.
Okay. And she was taken to meet these kids at was it like a classroom setting?
Yeah, they did like a classroom setting, and she doesn't know if it was on a craft or in a facility. But it was a fake classroom setting, a vignette for her to be able to teach in and to show them how to be teenagers,
how to be kids, which would make actually perfect sense if you're going to do hybrids. Well, that would be one reason, is to integrate them into society once you get them to look just like us. But with a little bit of them. Which, that's kind of bizarre, though. Why would they go through the hybrid process if they're going to make them look identical to humans? Why not just have humans brainwash them and make them do their bidding?
Well, I think that the hybrids, the Greys, this is the thing. Humans, light embodied entities, are said to be eternal. We're supposed to have a soul, and that we'll go on or come back. And
who would want to do that? Oh, this planet's crazy.
No, well, the planet's awesome. It's some of the people, I don't know.
That's true too.
But the Greys, they live to be 911 up to 900 to 1100 years old, and then they die. So perhaps they want that eternal quest. Maybe that's why they want to become hybrids with us for that particular reason.
So they want to like have a doorway into heaven, basically. They want to.
Well, no, I didn't say heaven. I said that.
Or to a soul that goes into heaven, or
a soul,
wherever the afterlife is.
Well, the afterlife can take a while to get to, apparently. I understand that you have to reach a certain human attainment to surpass becoming embodied again. We're incarnate or discarnate entities, or we're human entities. And hue is an ancient word for the measurement of light. We still use it today to measure light. Man is for manifestation, which is to come into the physical. A human is a light-embodied entity. Light is a continuous wave that has the ability to manifest based on the physics of its environment. Humans are highly adaptable in body and supposedly call it a soul, call it your soul mind, call it your consciousness, call it the consciousness expression of the ultimate source. I'm not sure what it is. I do know that there is something. And perhaps we ask ourselves, what is it that we can offer these other races that they come to us, humans who are still somewhat barbaric? That's what we have, is our very essence of our being. And that is our soul, that eternal part of us. So that's what they're lacking.
That's a great theory.
It is a theory.
I hope one day we actually discover what the actual truth is of what they're doing with the hybridization. Laurie, it's been awesome having you here for this hour. Can you tell the audience listening in your website addresses and how to find you on social media or anywhere to promote your work?
Right. Yes, thank you. I mean, I'll be speaking on the Contactee Phenomena on the 15th of March for San Jose MUFON. And then the 27th and 28th of March is UFO Con San Jose 2015. I'm on the abduction panel there. And then free of charge to anyone who attends Sunday morning, I'll be facilitating the Experiencers Group. This is an opportunity in a non-judgmental forum for people to come and express their truth and have the ability to have people listen with compassion and understanding, and hopefully be able to provide them some insight and direction to the experiences that they had. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And in the meantime, you can check my website out at trueyouhypnotherapy.com. You can see me on Facebook. You can follow me at Twitter at Laurie's True You.
Very cool. Laurie, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we can have you back on real soon. It was a blast having you on. Really was.
Thank you. It was really fun. Thanks for having me. It was really my pleasure. That was back in 1996.
Wow.
Okay, since video cameras were around, please tell me that you were recording your test and your certification there. Tell me there's video of this.
No, they didn't. But I do have a plethora of other fantastic videos that show some pretty good-looking UFOs in infrared video. And there's a picture on my Facebook page, actually. I was driving from Sacramento to San Diego, and I hit the Grapevine right about 50 miles north of Los Angeles, and I felt like I was being followed, and I kept looking, and I glimpsed several times what I thought was a UFO. So I finally just pulled over quickly at a Triple J gas station and whipped out my digital camera, turned around and took a picture and got a daytime picture of a UFO. And within a matter of seconds, there were just helicopters everywhere. So I got back into my car and took off and posted the picture. I mean, what else could I do?
Has any government official ever come knocking at your door about that picture?
Not about that picture.
Well, other pictures? What else has happened that's caught their attention?
Well, I've had an incident earlier on. I got a little bit was my own fault, I guess. I got a little bit too close to a base. We would go out to gather evidence, and we would set up in the daytime and mark our horizons and come back with the cameras at night to film. And we got in a little bit of trouble. But I've had an incident too where just out of nowhere, where there shouldn't have been anyone, we didn't hear any vehicles approaching yet, there was one all of a sudden. These two men in suits came over, went right into the back of my boogie van, which back in the day, you know, we didn't have everything on laptops. Then I had actual star maps and books.
Oh,
and
that stuff that the older folks called paper, right?
Yeah, everything was paper. we had lights strapped to our heads.
Oh, way back when.
But they went right through my stuff. They rifled through everything, and I kept asking them who they were. And they said they were private security, so I continued with private security for what or who or where? I mean, where am I trespassing? And they didn't. They weren't actually in the position to be answering the questions.
Where was this again? Was this in Area 51 where you were driving?
No. Actually, that incident was just east of Sacramento here.
Oh, okay.
What bases around there?
Yeah, what bases are on there?
Well, actually, there's bases all over here from Sacramento.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio right here on, once again, the Dark Matter Radio Network and PSN Radio. We are live, as always, and you can check out the chat room over on www.psn-radio.com. With us now is the guest of this first hour, Miss Laurie McDonald. Welcome to the show, ma'am. And let me just say that you have one of the hardest day jobs ever, I think, in this field.
You know, it can be a hard job sometimes. It's harder at night.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show here with us and spending some quality time with us. Now, you know, give the audience a brief of your background, because I just really became, aware of you recently when you were on Unraveling the Secrets with Tim Beckley. Shout out to Tim Beckley, and of course his lovely, lovely co-host, Miss Anderson. And it fascinates me anytime I speak to somebody who does what you do. For example, when you counsel abductees. What got you interested in doing this and doing hypnotherapy on
them back to a particular age, and while they were about to express something, their story changed, and they were all of a sudden seeing a UFO. They were camping. He was with his brother. They saw it hover, then land. They saw entities, and right when I was about to ask a question, a ball of light about the size of a softball appeared right above his head and zipped down to the end of his body. And, I'm in the middle of an examination, and I turn and look over my shoulders to see if anybody else saw it, and 3 out of the 5 judges did see it, and they were like wide-eyed and jaws open, and they indicated for me to continue. When I started to talk to him again, it was like he was clean. He had no memory at all about talking about a UFO or seeing the entities, and he had my curiosity piqued. He was just about to describe the entity and gone. So I've been very intrigued since then. And then all of a sudden, I started getting lots and lots of calls. A lot was happening, and people wanted to explore it.
So, in other words, the whole UFO contactee thing just kind of happened by chance.
Well, yes.
Well, let me ask you, how long ago did this happen, by the way?
These folks.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, actually. I was interested in the mind always, and the power of hypnosis seemed quite profound when I was young, and all of the reading I did on it. I studied social behavioralism for a while, but then I enrolled into the Sacramento Institute of Alchemical Hypnotherapy, which is a transformational hypnotherapy. And I finished in Santa Fe, but during the process of examination, you have to regress somebody and then address a particular subject and then bring them back up. And they test you on that. They want to make sure you can do that before they send you out in the world. And
now, can I ask a question, if I may?
Sure.
Now, you said it was a alchemic hypnotherapy school?
Right.
Alchemy? Okay, so does that mean you were involved in utilizing drugs, medication, or other types of substances to induce
And
the hypnosis?
he's trying to get high tonight on his trip. Can you supply him?
I am
with
not. Come on.
No, it's all...
No, it's a good question, actually, though.
No, it's all psychotherapy. There's no pharmaceuticals.
There's no pharmacology.
Involved.
There's no pharmaceuticals.
No pharmaceuticals involved, right?
No, none whatsoever. So during the examination process, I induced a person, regressed